The dog's paw landed on the canvas duffel bag for the third time. The mall's polished tile echoed with the sound of claws. Sharp, deliberate, almost angry. Shoppers nearby paused, hesitant. The golden retriever, vested in red with the words "Service Animal, Do Not Pet" embroidered across his side, was locked in place, unmoving. Eyes narrowed on that bag like it had whispered something only he could hear. Mall security moved in. One guard knelt slowly, voice low and unsure. "Easy, buddy. Back up now." But the dog wouldn't. He pressed his paw down harder, nails scraping against the fabric, teeth beginning to bare, not in aggression, but in urgency. He whimpered, a high, strangled sound. The handler, a young woman no older than 25, tightened her grip on his harness, but her voice trembled. "Valor," she said softly. "What are you doing?" The bag twitched. No one breathed. Then came the sound, a muffled knock from inside. A security officer shouted, "Back! Everyone back!" The handler's name was Dani, and in that moment, surrounded by polished storefronts and artificial lights, she felt the air thicken. Her fingers went numb around Valor's harness. Her legs moved instinctively, stepping between the dog and the bag, shielding him even though she didn't understand why. The guard closest to the duffel reached out, unzipped it slowly. Inside wasn't a bomb. It was a child, barely 6, bound with duct tape, eyes wide and bloodshot, skin pale and slick with sweat. Dani staggered. Valor barked once, loud and sharp, then sat, tail thumping once against the tile. His job was done. The chaos after was blurry. Sirens, EMTs, screams, shoppers herded to exits. A woman sobbing uncontrollably against a kiosk. The father of the child handcuffed 10 minutes later in the underground parking lot. But Dani, she stood in the middle of it all, unmoving. Valor pressed close to her side like a shield made of golden fur and loyalty. Her mind wasn't on the present anymore. It was slipping back to why she had this dog, why her fingers were always shaking, why her voice didn't rise even when the world around her shattered. They said dogs can smell trauma, that they can see what humans are too blind to notice. Valor had seen it in her first. 6 months ago, Dani hadn't spoken to anyone without flinching. She hadn't been inside a mall since the discharge. The doctor said she had complex PTSD, like that was a neat little label you could slap on the nightmares and call it healing. But Valor didn't need words. He just sat with her in the darkness, when her lungs refused to breathe, when her hands wouldn't stop shaking, when the world spun and she wanted to scream. He'd just lay his head in her lap and wait. That day at the mall, it wasn't the first time he saved someone, but it was the first time the world saw it. The story went viral. News outlets scrambled for interviews. Hero dog saves abducted child at local mall. But Dani declined every call, because what no one knew, not the press, not the police, not even the child's mother sobbing in gratitude, was that Valor wasn't trained to detect people in bags. He was trained to detect panic. And it wasn't the child's panic he was reacting to. It was Dani's. She'd walked past that duffel and her breath hitched, just barely. Her heart had stumbled in her chest, like it remembered something she hadn't let it remember. And Valor, he caught it, picked up what she couldn't say, what her brain buried 6 feet under silence. That was the moment Dani knew Valor wasn't just a dog. He was memory, instinct, redemption in fur. That night, back in her small apartment with peeling paint and water rings on the ceiling, Dani sat on the floor with him, legs pulled to her chest. Her phone lit up every few seconds with notifications, headlines, even strangers offering to donate money to Valor's cause. But none of that mattered. She just stared at her dog, his head resting on his paws, eyes open, watching her. "You felt it, didn't you?" she whispered. Her voice cracked in the middle. His ears flicked. Then he crawled into her lap, slowly, carefully, like he knew she might break, and licked the single tear from her cheek. She didn't sleep that night. She opened the bottom drawer of her nightstand instead, pulled out a photo. It was folded 4 times, edges soft from handling. The image showed a younger Dani, dressed in fatigues, squatting next to a Belgian Malinois with scars down his flank. Behind them, desert sand and a Humvee half buried in dust. Both looked exhausted. Both looked alive. The dog in the photo was named Ajax. He'd saved her in another life, carried her half dead out of a collapsed bunker after an IED. She remembered his fur soaked in her blood, the way he whined when she passed out in the dust. They'd taken him away after, said he was retired and relocated. She never found out where. Valor was an Ajax, but he carried his spirit, like he'd been waiting to finish what Ajax started. The next morning, Dani opened the news article. There was a photo of her standing beside Valor outside the mall. Her eyes looked hollow, but Valor's, bright, alert, ready, and under it, a single quote. "Service dogs don't just save lives, they remind us how to live." She didn't remember saying it, but it was true. 3 days later, a woman knocked on her apartment door, mid-40s, tired eyes, holding a photo in her hand. Dani didn't recognize her, not at first. But the photo, she did. It was Ajax. Same scars, same piercing stare. The woman's voice shook as she spoke. "I'm his former handler. After the war, they gave him to me, but he passed last year. I saw the story, saw your dog, and I thought, maybe you should have this." Dani took the photo, another one. This time, Ajax curled on a porch under the shade of a sycamore tree, tongue out, a faint smile on his gray muzzled face. The woman turned to leave, but paused at the doorway. "I think Valor found you for a reason." Dani nodded, the lump in her throat too heavy for words. Outside, rain began to fall, soft, steady, like the world was washing itself clean. Inside, Valor sat beside the front window, staring out, ears perked, as if he heard something coming, or someone, as if the story wasn't done yet, because it wasn't. The next time Dani saw the boy, he was holding a stuffed lion so tightly it looked like he might crush the seams. It was 2 weeks after the mall. She hadn't expected the visit. There'd been no warning, no phone call. Just a soft knock at the community center door where she'd started volunteering part-time. And then there he was, Liam. That was his name, the boy from the bag. His mother stood behind him, hands gently resting on his shoulders, her expression caught somewhere between gratitude and exhaustion. She nudged him forward, but he hesitated. Then his eyes found Valor. The dog stood frozen, then wagged his tail just once, slow, measured. Liam dropped the lion, ran. Valor met him halfway. It wasn't dramatic, no leaping or barking, just a silent embrace, the kind that doesn't need permission or words. The boy clung to Valor's neck, small fingers tangling in golden fur, and Dani felt something strange twist in her chest. She realized then, this wasn't closure. This was the beginning of something none of them understood yet. The mother's name was Ivy. She had the eyes of someone who'd fought too many silent battles. She sat across from Dani in the empty art room of the center, nervously spinning her wedding ring around and around, until finally slipping it off and letting it rest on the table. "They told me what your dog did," she whispered, barely above the hum of the fluorescent lights. "And I wanted to thank you, but it's more than that." Dani listened. Ivy looked at the closed door, where Liam and Valor played quietly beyond. "There were others. I don't have proof yet, but..." She choked on the words. He wasn't the only one they took. A sharp chill moved through the room, as if the temperature had dipped by 10 degrees. Dani didn't move, didn't speak, because a part of her already knew. Her trauma had a scent, a shape, a rhythm, and it matched what she'd seen in that boy's eyes that day. "What do you mean others?" Ivy hesitated. "It was a ring, a network. They trafficked kids through different cities, always the same pattern. Abductions no one noticed. Foster kids, runaways, 1 or 2 safe drop spots for pickup, abandoned lockers, hidden compartments in rideshares, and sometimes," her voice cracked, "sometimes they stashed them in plain sight. Shopping malls, airports, storage units." Dani swallowed hard. "You went to the police?" "They're investigating, but it's slow. And the man they arrested that day, he was just a delivery point, not the one in charge." Valor padded into the room just then and sat at Dani's feet. Liam followed behind, quieter now, the lion back in his arms. The moment stretched thin. Then Ivy said, "I think your dog saved more than just my son. I think he might have heard something, felt something. We're all missing." The idea haunted Dani long after they left. It followed her home, whispered to her while she stood in the shower, watching the water spiral down the drain like it might pull her in too. It echoed in Valor's eyes. She sat on her bed that night, Valor curled against her side and whispered, "What else did you feel?" He looked up, ears twitching, then rested his head on her lap. A moment later, she reached into her drawer and pulled out her old service lanyard, the VA badge, the one with the rusted clip and peeling photo. She hadn't touched it in over a year. She stared at it for a long time, then made a decision. Dani returned to the mall the next day, not because she wanted to. Every nerve in her body rebelled. The glass doors, the polished floors, the echo of footsteps, it all spun around her like a carousel of ghosts. But Valor pressed against her leg, steady and warm. She retraced her steps, past the smoothie kiosk, the water fountain with the fake marble, the bookstore where she'd first smelled burnt coffee and something had twisted in her gut. Past the place where the bag had been. She stopped, closed her eyes and listened. To the sound of clacking heels, squeaky strollers, the buzz of neon, the soft thump of music through a speaker. Her heart raced, her breath shortened. But then she heard it, a faint whimper. No one else reacted, but Valor did. Head jerked, body rigid. He pulled hard. Dani followed him, pulse pounding, through a corridor labeled "Staff Only." She shouldn't have been there, but no one stopped her. They reached a maintenance closet, locked. Valor pawed at the door like he'd done 2 weeks ago. This time there was no child inside, just a smell, ammonia, sweat, something darker, and in the corner, a dropped wristband, purple, with a child's name in faded marker. She took it to Ivy, who gasped. "That's not Liam's," she said, eyes wide. "That's from the foster home. That's Kenny's. He vanished 3 months ago." And just like that, the truth uncoiled like a snake. Dani dove into the records. With Ivy's help, she traced back to a shelter Liam had been placed in weeks before his abduction. On the surface, everything looked clean, but Valor had other ideas. When they visited the shelter under the pretense of delivering donations, he froze outside one of the back offices. Low growl, head down, shoulders tight. Dani placed a hand on his back. The director inside the office smiled too much, asked too many questions about Valor's training. That night, Dani ran a background check. The director's real name wasn't the one on the badge. She handed the evidence to Ivy, who handed it to a detective she trusted. And that's when things started to move. Warrants, raids, testimonies. One by one, missing names started connecting. The ring was real. Valor had led them straight to it, but it wasn't over. Not yet. Not until every child was found. Not until every hand that had silenced them was held accountable. And for the first time in a long time, Dani felt something inside her ignite. Not rage, not fear, purpose. The old community center smelled like mildew and mop water, but that night it might as well have been a war room. A single desk lamp cast long shadows over the table, where Dani, Ivy, and a retired police tech named Tom sat in silence, eyes locked on a corkboard riddled with strings and photos and circled names. Valor lay under the table, head on his paws, tail flicking now and then. His version of listening. The hum of the building's ancient heating system made the silence feel louder somehow. Tom pointed to a name near the center. Leon Mercer, alias Douglas Nash, James Brantley. That's your guy. He's run at least 3 foster homes in 5 years. None of them lasted more than 6 months. Always closed quietly, never charged. Dani leaned forward, because someone's cleaning up behind him. Exactly, Tom exhaled. And we still don't know how deep this goes. The walls felt like they were closing in. Dani's fingers tapped rhythmically against her mug. Lukewarm coffee, long gone stale. Valor's tail thumped once. Dani looked down. He was watching her. Not the board, not Tom. Her. Like he could feel the weight in her chest before it crushed her ribs. She whispered, "It's happening again." Tom looked confused. Ivy didn't, because she remembered the folded photo in Dani's apartment. The one with Ajax, the one with sand and scars and things no one spoke about. She knew Dani had seen war in places where orders mattered more than lives, and sometimes monsters wore uniforms. Dani had thought she left that behind. But this wasn't over there. This was home, and it was rotting from the inside. The next day, Dani put on the vest she swore she'd never wear again, the one with the reinforced straps and the patch across the front. Crisis response. Veteran unit. She'd kept it out of guilt. Now it felt like armor. She clipped Valor's harness. Time to work. They started with the last known shelter Mercer had operated, Sunhaven Youth Home. Shut down 4 months ago after financial misconduct. The building still stood, boarded and left to decay. But Valor's nose said otherwise. The moment they stepped inside, his body stiffened. The air was heavy, stale, like secrets clung to the walls. In the back hall, Dani found something that made her throat close. A wall lined with hooks, child-sized coats still hanging, a shoe missing its pair, and in the far corner, a single drawing pinned to the wall. Crayon, a sun, a dog with wings, a stick figure with long brown hair holding its paw. Dani stared. It looked like her. Valor growled low in his throat, moving toward the crawl-space door at the base of the wall. She knelt and pulled it open. The smell hit her first. Not rot, not death. Fear. Valor crawled in. She followed with a flashlight. Inside were scratches on the walls. Small ones. Desperate ones. Names carved in slanted letters. She ran her fingers across them like Braille. One stood out. Freshest, boldest, Jaden. She took a picture. When they exited, daylight felt like betrayal. Later that evening, she gave the photo to Ivy, who stared in disbelief. "I know that name," she whispered. "That's my nephew." Dani's hand tightened around the photo. The boy had vanished the year before. Everyone assumed he'd run away, but now they knew better. "I think he's still out there," Ivy said. "They don't always kill them. They move them." Dani looked at Valor. He lifted his head, ears sharp. He knew. The next week, Dani and Tom pulled every inspection report on the old shelters Mercer had managed. One kept showing up in the footnotes. Camp Lilac, closed in 2012. Technically a nature rehabilitation program for troubled teens. "Wasn't that place condemned?" Dani asked, scanning the faded photo in the report. "Supposedly," Tom muttered, scrolling through old drone footage. "But look here, these heat signatures? That's from last month. Someone's still using it." Tom zoomed in on one shot. Solar panels, new fencing, a white van. Dani's mouth went dry. She knew what came next. She went alone. Told Ivy she'd call if it was anything. Brought Valor. They arrived at midnight, headlights off, tires crunching, slow against gravel. Trees loomed like sentinels. The camp's wooden sign hung crooked, faded letters barely visible under a layer of moss. Camp Lilac. Growth through guidance. Dani parked 100 yards back, slipped through the trees with Valor close at her side. No guards, no dogs, just lights flickering in the bunkhouses and the quiet, eerie hum of an off-grid generator. They reached the main cabin. Dani's hand found the pistol at her waist, a habit she thought she'd forgotten. Inside, bunk beds lined the walls. Empty. Then, Valor stopped, his entire body stilled. A door near the back. Dani eased it open. There were 6 children inside. No chains, no restraints, just silence. Hollow eyes, blank stares. One looked up. He was no older than 10, and whispered, "Are you here to take us back?" Her breath caught. She dropped to her knees. "No," she said, voice cracking. "We're here to take you home." Valor nudged the boy gently, and the spell broke. Tears flowed. Children clung to Dani like a lifeline. She made the call. 20 minutes later, sirens echoed in the distance. Ivy's voice came through the phone, ragged with disbelief. "You found them?" Dani looked down at Valor, now curled beside the youngest child like a sentry. "He did." By dawn, agents swept the camp. Arrests were made. Mercer was gone. Again. But this time, they had evidence, enough to shake the system. Back at the center, Dani sat alone in the quiet art room. She took out a fresh piece of paper, drew a sun, a winged dog, a girl with a long brown braid. She pinned it to the wall beside the old crayon drawing. Valor watched from the corner, tail wagging once, and for the first time in years, Dani smiled. The boy at the door couldn't have been more than 12, but his eyes, they carried years. He didn't say a word, just handed Dani a folded piece of paper, stared past her like he didn't trust her kindness yet, then walked off down the sidewalk without looking back. Dani called after him. Nothing. She unfolded the paper. It wasn't a letter, it was a map, roughly sketched, marked with little X's and names. Tyler, Zoe, Quinn. Each name nestled beside abandoned buildings, alleyways, a storm drain. One X circled twice with the words, "Don't tell anyone, he's still there." The ink was smeared, like maybe a tear had fallen on it. Dani stood frozen in the threshold for several seconds. The world around her shifted, became muted. She could hear her own breath, shallow and rhythmic, like a countdown. Valor brushed her leg gently, pressing into her thigh like he always did when her PTSD flared. She blinked and came back. The map was real, and it was a message. Not a cry for help, a command. Someone had trusted her. She clipped on Valor's harness without thinking, grabbed a flashlight, her worn leather boots, and the keys to the truck. She didn't text Ivy, didn't call Tom. This one felt personal, quiet, like too many words would break it. The wind that night was sharp and dry, the kind that bit through sleeves and carried secrets in its howl. She found the first X under an overpass near Westbridge. Nothing there, except Valor started sniffing the base of a rusted pipe, tail low, moving with that predatory alertness she'd learned to trust. She followed him around the curve of the concrete, and there, under a tangle of makeshift blankets, was a child, shivering, curled so tightly into themselves it took her a moment to realize they were alive. "Hey," Dani whispered, crouching. "Hey, I'm not here to hurt you." The kid didn't move, but Valor padded forward, slow, deliberate, lowered his head and licked the child's hand once. A twitch, then a whisper. "Zoe." The girl looked up. She had a chipped front tooth and one swollen eye. Bruises mapped her arms like constellations. Dani felt something break inside her. She pulled off her jacket and wrapped it around the girl. No questions, no promises, just warmth. The truck ride was quiet. Valor didn't even pant. The way he rested his head beside Zoe's knee, gentle, steady, Dani knew he was holding her together better than words could. They made 3 more stops that night. Tyler, Quinn, another girl who wouldn't give a name, just clung to Valor like he was her only tether. By the time dawn crept in like a thief, Dani had 4 kids in her care, all of them silent, all of them carrying shadows too big for their small frames. She didn't take them to the police. She took them to Maggie. Maggie ran the hearth, an unofficial shelter wrapped in a peeling Victorian house, strung with fairy lights and always smelling of cinnamon and cloves. Maggie didn't ask questions, just looked Dani in the eyes, saw the truth, and nodded. "Let them rest," she said, voice low. "The world can ask questions tomorrow." Dani exhaled for the first time in hours. Later, when the children slept, Maggie handed her a cup of tea and said, "You're becoming a lighthouse, you know." Dani gave a bitter smile. "Feels more like I'm stuck in the storm." Maggie tapped the side of her mug. "That's the trick. Lighthouses always stand in the storm. That's where they're needed." Outside, Valor paced the porch like a soldier on watch. And inside, something quiet bloomed. It happened slowly over days. The kids started talking, whispered stories, half memories. They trusted Valor first. He was safe, soft, never asked for anything. Then they started to trust Dani. Quinn drew her a picture, stick figures holding hands and a dog with wings again. Dani stared at it for a long time. The symbolism kept showing up, again and again. Wings, freedom. Valor wasn't just a dog to them. He was a guardian, a symbol of survival. And then Ivy showed up with a folder, a thick one. "Mercer's been found," she said, breathless. "Not arrested, yet, but tracked. He's in Ash Hollow, some kind of property he's using as a recovery ranch for teens." Dani's mouth turned to dust. Ash Hollow was 3 towns over. Quiet, unassuming. No law enforcement hub, no spotlight. just old farms and broken roads. "Who's covering for him?" Dani asked, but Ivy just shook her head. "We don't know, but it's big and it's dirty." She opened the folder. Inside, photos, paper trails, names, donations from powerful families, false permits, a web of protection Mercer had built over years. But one thing was missing: proof. "No one will touch him without a smoking gun," Ivy said, placing a photo on the table. It showed a barn, windowless, a camera mounted near the roofline. Dani stared at it, the hum in her bones getting louder. Valor let out a soft growl. "He's in there," Dani said. And just like that, the storm returned. They planned it quietly. Just Dani, Ivy, Tom, and Maggie. No cops, not yet. They waited for a night when the sky turned charcoal and the roads turned slick with rain. It felt fitting, like the storm itself was giving cover. The barn sat alone at the edge of Mercer's ranch. Dani approached from the rear, dressed in black, heart hammering like war drums. Valor was silent beside her. Rain slicked his fur. She reached the wall, pressed her ear to the metal siding. Voices, low, male, laughter. Then, something sharper. A cry. She didn't wait. Kicked in the side door like she'd been trained. Valor shot forward like fire. Chaos exploded. Men shouting, running. But Valor had found the room. He barked once, loud, commanding, and Dani followed. Inside, 4 children sat in kennels. Kennels. She couldn't breathe. She opened each door, fingers shaking. "You're safe," she whispered, voice cracking. "You're safe now." Valor held the hallway. Outside, headlights. Tom, Ivy, gun drawn, badges ready. By sunrise, Mercer was in cuffs, but Dani didn't stay to watch. She sat in the barn, knees in the straw, arms around the smallest child. He whispered, "I knew you'd come." She didn't ask how. She just held him tighter. And Valor lay at her feet, eyes closed, like he'd carried the weight of 100 ghosts, and finally set them free. It took less than a week for the media to twist it into a spectacle. Hero Dog rescues children from underground abuse ring. Mysterious veteran operation exposes elite cover-up. Camp of horrors discovered, thanks to one woman and her dog. Dani watched it all from the back of Maggie's porch, Valor at her side, the glow of her phone screen flickering like a dying firefly. She didn't feel like a hero, not when she still saw the bruises on those kids every time she closed her eyes. Not when every news anchor mispronounced their names and treated their pain like a headline. She powered the phone off, tossed it beside her boots. Valor lifted his head. "I didn't do this for them," she said aloud. "You know that, right?" He rested his head back down. She knew he knew. The fallout came fast. Mercer's arrest triggered a chain reaction. Hidden files, silent payoffs, names that had been buried deep inside private institutions, and sealed case records. It was more than one man. It was a network, a machine, built on silence and blind eyes. Tom worked nights gathering evidence for federal agents. Ivy gave interviews, carefully steering the focus back to the children. Maggie opened 2 more rooms in the hearth and took in 4 more kids without question. And Dani, she kept driving. She followed Valor. They found another boy behind a strip mall dumpster. He didn't speak for 4 days, just sat on Valor's blanket and stared at the ceiling like he was waiting for it to collapse. They found a girl walking barefoot down a highway at 2 a.m., clutching a plastic doll whose arms had been torn off. She only spoke Spanish, but Valor didn't need translation. He just laid beside her, and when she finally cried, it was into his fur. Dani kept a journal now, not with words, with names. Each page, a name. No dates, no backstories, just proof. Proof that someone had seen them. She carried the journal everywhere. Sometimes at night, she'd wake in a sweat, heart pounding from dreams soaked in gunfire and sand. But lately, those dreams had changed. No longer just the desert. Now there were faces, small, dirt-smudged faces, kids in shadows reaching out, and Valor, always at the center, leading her through it. One evening, while helping Maggie repaint the old dining room wall, a shade of warm gold that made the whole house feel like autumn, Zoe walked in with a small cardboard box. She placed it gently on the table. "For Valor," she said shyly, then turned and scampered away. Inside was a hand-painted dog tag made of clay, a little uneven. The letters scratched in with a pencil tip. It read, "Guardian of the Lost." Dani didn't cry often, but she did then. She knelt beside Valor and clipped it to his harness. "You earned that," she whispered. Weeks passed, then a month, and the storm never really stopped. Because when you tear the curtain down, more monsters always spill out. But Dani was different now. She wasn't fighting from the shadows anymore. She started speaking, quietly at first, at town halls, community centers. Not just about Mercer, but about the system, the shelters with no oversight, the kids that slip through, the paper trails that vanish when money's involved. She didn't dress up, didn't wear makeup, didn't sanitize anything. She told the truth, and when people tried to look away, she showed them the names in her journal. One night after a long panel discussion, a woman in a press suit approached. She had the kind of face that lived in boardrooms, tight smile, manicured voice. She said, "You've become quite a symbol, Ms. Rourke. We'd love for you and Valor to be part of a national campaign, spokespeople for recovery, perhaps even a book deal." Dani looked at her like she'd grown horns, then leaned in, voice cold and clear. "These kids don't need campaigns. They need safety. They need eyes that don't flinch. And they need us to stop turning trauma into theater." She walked away, Valor at her side. Later, Maggie laughed. "You just turned down more money than I've seen in my life." Dani shrugged. "I'm not doing this for money." "You're not doing it for revenge either," Maggie said, looking at her carefully. "No." Dani stared out the window. A storm was coming again, clouds blooming dark and slow across the horizon. But this time, she didn't feel fear, just purpose. That night, Valor stirred in his sleep. His legs kicked gently, chasing something in dreams. Dani lay beside him on the floor, hand resting on his back. The world felt unbearably big. But here, in this small pocket of light, it also felt winnable. The next morning she got the call, from the boy, the same one who had handed her the map. His voice shook on the line. "You need to come," he said. "There's one more place." She didn't ask where. She just asked, "Are they still in danger?" "Yes." "Okay," she said. "Don't bring anyone," he whispered. "Not even the other lady. Just you and Valor." Dani gripped the phone. "Where?" The answer chilled her to the bone. Because it wasn't a shelter or a warehouse. It was a house, a nice one, in a suburb, with trimmed hedges and a white fence. She wrote down the address, her handwriting tight and trembling, then looked at Valor. "You ready?" she asked. He stood, wordless, steady, because he always knew before she did. As they drove out of town, the journal rested on the passenger seat, open to a blank page, waiting for the next name, waiting to be seen. The house looked like every other on the block. That's what made it worse. Late afternoon light turned the white fence gold, like some kind of lie. Wind moved lazily through the oak trees lining the street, and someone nearby was mowing a lawn. The world kept turning, even here, even as evil hid in broad daylight. Dani parked half a block away and stepped out slowly. No vest, no badge, just Valor in her gut. She watched the house, noticed the blinds twitch once. Someone was waiting. The boy's instructions had been clear. Back gate, wait until dusk. Do not speak to the man in the window. She remembered the tone in his voice, not panic, warning. She crouched beside Valor behind a hedge as the sun slipped lower, shadows stretching across driveways and rose gardens. Her heartbeat was steady, not calm, but controlled, like before a breach, like war. When the sky turned bruised and the cicadas grew louder, she moved, slipped around the side of the house. The back gate wasn't locked, just latched. Inside the yard, everything was too neat. Patio chairs stacked, a garden hose curled perfectly, not a blade of grass out of place. But Valor stiffened immediately, head lowered, muscles tight. He sniffed the air and turned left toward the shed. Dani followed. The shed door had a padlock, but not one that would stop her. She reached into her coat pocket, pulled out a slender tool she hadn't used in years, and picked it open with a twist. The door creaked. Inside was silence, and then a cough, a shuffle. The smell hit first, stale sweat, mold, plastic. Then her flashlight beam caught the shape of a mattress, a plastic bin, a bucket, and a girl. Thin, barely 13, eyes wide and wild. Valor didn't wait. He padded in, slow, and lowered himself so he looked smaller, gentler. The girl didn't move at first. Then, like instinct, she reached out, touched his ear, started to cry. Dani stepped in, voice like velvet. "I'm here to get you out." "No!" the girl rasped, panic spiking. "He's watching." "We'll handle him," Dani said. "You don't have to go back, not ever." The girl looked up. "There's more, inside the house." In the walls, Dani froze. "In the what?" "He locks them in. Soundproof." I heard them. Scratching. The breath left Dani's lungs. Valor whined, low and sharp. She scanned the walls of the shed. No surveillance, no cameras. But this went deeper, much deeper. She radioed Tom, voice low. "I've got a live one, possibly more. Inside the main structure, sending coordinates. Quiet approach only." Tom's voice was calm but clipped. "Copy, ETA 4 minutes. No lights. I'll bring the thermal drone." Dani guided the girl out, wrapped her in a jacket from the truck, then turned back. She didn't wait for Tom. She headed straight for the house. The back door was unlocked. The kitchen was pristine. Granite counters, white subway tile, and a smell, citrus and bleach. Valor growled once, then moved toward the hall. They reached the second door on the right. Pantry, number. When she pressed her ear to it, there was humming, low, mechanical. She opened it. Inside was a narrow flight of stairs, concrete steps, basement. Valor went first. The hum grew louder, air cooler. The smell changed, less bleach, more rot. At the bottom was a hallway with 4 doors, steel, each with a bolt on the outside. Dani's hands shook. She unlatched the first one. A boy, curled on a cot, eyes shut tight. "Hey," she whispered, "you're safe now." He didn't move. She crouched, reached for him, and that's when she heard the bolt slide behind her. The door slammed shut. Darkness. Total. Number, not now. Not again. "Valor!" she shouted, slamming against the door. "Valor!" A low bark from outside. Then a snarl, a scream, gunfire. Dani dropped to the floor, shielding the boy. More shouting. A crash. Then silence. Heavy. Suffocating. She heard the bolt slide again. Light poured in. Tom, gun drawn, jaw tight. "You okay?" "Get the others," Dani said, standing fast. "There's more." By the time backup arrived, they'd opened all 4 doors. 3 more children, 2 unconscious, 1 too dehydrated to speak. The man who locked Dani in? Dead. Not from valor, from panic. He'd tried to run, tripped, broke his neck falling down the basement stairs. She stood over his body for a long moment. Didn't feel triumph, just relief. When the last child was wheeled out, Valor finally sat beside her. His side was scratched. Blood streaked his paw. But he leaned into her like always, like nothing could shake him. Outside, news crews were already forming. Tom asked if she wanted to speak. Dani looked down at her mud-streaked jeans, the journal tucked under her arm, the clay dog tag still dangling from Valor's collar. "No," she said. "I've said enough." Instead, she handed Tom the journal. Open to a new page. 6 new names. "Just make sure they are not forgotten." He nodded. As she walked away, the crowd started to clap. Not for her, for the children, and for the dog that never stopped walking into darkness. Valor didn't look back. He never did. They had another name to find, and a new page to fill. They didn't stop traveling after that. Each town was different. Each case, a fracture in the same broken mirror. There was the farm in Kansas where a family had taken in foster kids for the paycheck and kept them sleeping in barns. There was the warehouse outside Tulsa, a fake rehab center, complete with brochures and licensing, and a locked wing no one was supposed to enter. In every place, Valor knew before Dani did. He'd slow his steps, ears twitch, head low. He could smell pain, could taste it in the air. But the difference now was that Dani no longer walked alone. Word had spread. A small network formed, quiet as a heartbeat but steady as rain. Ivy, still in California, working on survivor outreach. Tom coordinating with trusted agents who hadn't sold their souls for silence. Maggie's shelter, now nationally recognized but still fiercely local. Still just a house filled with warm food and unspoken understanding. And the boy, the one with the map. He'd started sending letters. No names, no return address. Just hand-drawn maps, locations, dots. Each one circled in red. One arrived every month. Dani never spoke about how she knew it was him. She just trusted the instinct. The same way she trusted Valor when he stared at a seemingly empty building for too long. They started calling themselves the Thread, because that's what it felt like. They were pulling on a thread no one else dared to tug. And when they pulled, things unraveled, slowly, but surely. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't on the news anymore. People got bored, moved on, but Dani didn't care. She was never doing it for them anyway. One cold November morning, they reached a shuttered motel outside Jackson. Ivy had sent a tip, rumors of kids being dropped off and never picked up. Dani approached alone, flashlight in hand, Valor glued to her hip. Inside room 8, she found an old crib shoved in the closet. No child, just a stuffed rabbit, burnt around the edges. She picked it up carefully, then saw something underneath. A crayon drawing, folded. She opened it slowly. A girl and a dog, stick figures, but unmistakable. The dog had a red tag, and under the drawing were 3 words, shaky but certain. "You found me." Dani sat on the floor, let the silence press in. Then she reached for her journal, wrote a name she hadn't heard yet. Didn't matter. It was theirs now. Claimed. Seen. That night, she and Valor slept in the truck. The motel was too soaked in sadness. But before sleep claimed her, Dani pulled out a small bundle from her glove box. Dog tags, her father's. She used to wear them, then hid them, then forgot. Now she held them again. Cold metal, worn edges. She wrapped them around Valor's collar next to the clay tag. Because he had earned them. Because her father would have understood. She whispered into the night, not to anyone alive. "You were right. Some wars don't end, but some are worth fighting anyway." The next morning, a stranger knocked on her window. Middle-aged, leather jacket, scar on his lip. A look that said ex-cop or ex-something. "You Dani Rourke?" She stepped out slowly. "Who's asking?" "My name's Grant," he said. "I got your name from a kid I picked up 6 months ago. Said if I ever decided to stop being a coward, I should come find you." He handed her a photo. 2 children, smiling weakly, in a cafeteria. "This is the facility," he said. "Real one, hidden under a faith center in Alabama. I used to work security there. I didn't know at first. And when I did, I left. I shouldn't have." Dani stared at the photo, then at him. "You ready to do something about it?" His eyes welled, just slightly. "Yeah, I am." She turned to Valor. "Looks like we've got company." Valor stood, walked up to Grant, pressed his nose to the man's hand. Grant swallowed hard. "That's a hell of a dog." "No," Dani said. "He's more than that." As they drove south, Grant told his story. How he'd been hired under the pretense of a youth outreach program. How only certain staff had access to the lower level. How he once heard crying in a hallway that supposedly didn't exist on any blueprint. He said the kids called the place the root cellar because it was where they buried the ones who disobeyed. By the time they reached the Alabama border, the rain had started. Soft at first, then harder. Thunder rumbled low across the sky. Valor sat up in the back seat, ears perked. Dani gripped the wheel tighter. Every storm meant something now. Every storm was a memory trying to return. But this time, she wasn't scared of it. She welcomed it, because wherever lightning struck, shadows had to retreat. She leaned forward, watching the rain streak across the windshield like silver scars. "We pull the thread," she said quietly. Grant looked over. "And what happens when the whole thing unravels?" Dani didn't blink. "Then we rebuild it." They arrived just after dusk. The building was as Grant described. An old church on a hill, bright lights, warm music, people coming and going. But beneath it was the truth. Valor stared straight ahead, unmoving. She'd never seen him like that. Grant hesitated. "We going in now?" "Not yet," Dani said. "We wait. Watch, then strike. Like a pack." Dani smiled, just barely. "Exactly." And beside her, Valor didn't blink, didn't tremble. He just watched the door, waiting for the next child, the next name, the next soul to save. Rain dripped from the chapel's eaves in long, silver strands. The building looked holy, harmless. Even from here, through the truck's fogged windows, Dani could hear the organ, a hymn drifting out into the wet air like incense. Peaceful, deceiving. Valor sat stone still in the passenger seat, ears forward, eyes locked. He knew. Down in that cellar beneath the polished floors and borrowed faith, something was rotting. Inside her coat, Dani's fingers brushed the folded sketch she'd found in that motel closet. The girl and the dog, the red collar, the words, "You found me." She'd kept it. Every time she considered stopping, she'd feel that drawing's fragile edges, hear the way a child's voice cracked when they said thank you, and she knew. She was no longer just searching. She was answering. Grant shifted beside her, loading rounds into a pistol. His hands shook, just barely. "I lied," he muttered. "There's a fifth room in the basement, deeper, through the furnace panel." Dani looked at him. He didn't blink. "I saw them take a girl there," he whispered. "She had a necklace, purple stone. She screamed." He couldn't finish. Dani didn't make him. They waited until the parking lot cleared. The service lights dimmed. The organ stopped. Midnight. Time to move. They went in through the back. The old delivery entry from the 1960s kitchen retrofit still had a rusted hinge Grant remembered stepping over years ago. The inside smelled like lemon polish and coffee, but deeper in, beneath the silence, you could almost hear it. Breath, suppressed, heavy, human. Dani found the trap door behind a paneled wall in the pastor's office. No lock, just wait. Valor stepped over the threshold first. The stairs were narrow, cement, no handrail, and the darkness down there wasn't just absence of light, it was memory. The hallway at the bottom had the same soundproof doors she'd seen before. But this place had something new, rows of small intercom boxes above each cell, like observation windows, except there was no glass, just holes to listen. She pressed her ear to one, a soft whimper, then a voice, small, "Girl." "Hush now," he said, "it's sleep time." Another child, trapped with another. Dani swallowed the bile. Grant stood frozen behind her. "I worked here," he whispered. "How did I not know?" "You did," she said gently. "You just didn't believe it." He leaned back against the wall, face pale. Dani pointed to the last door. "That the one?" He nodded. Valor growled once, quiet, controlled, then stepped toward it. Dani knelt beside him. "You ready?" He turned, nudged her hand. That was enough. She pushed the panel aside, just as a floodlight above them clicked on. Voices shouted, gunmetal footsteps on concrete. Valor lunged before they got close. Toward the left, intercepting the first man. A body thudded. A gun fired into the ceiling. Chaos. Grant pulled Dani down. "Run!" he shouted. "No," she said. "We open the room." She sprinted for the final door as Valor drove another attacker to the floor. The panel didn't budge. Then, bang! Grant shouldered into it. It cracked open. Inside, a girl no older than 10 stood with her back to a mattress. Her necklace shimmered, a purple stone glowing faintly in the blinking emergency light. Her face lit up when she saw Valor. "I knew you'd come," she whispered. She stepped forward. Her eyes didn't even flinch at the chaos behind Dani, only locked on Valor. "Your name's Lily, isn't it?" Dani asked. She nodded. Valor licked her hand once. She smiled. Dani scooped her up just as 3 more guards thundered into view. But it was too late for them. Tom's voice roared from above. "Federal agents, down!" More footsteps. This time boots Dani trusted. The cavalry had come. Dani turned to see Ivy. Boots soaked, flashlight up, voice like steel. "We traced the financials." "You were right, Dani. It goes all the way to the board." By dawn, 48 children had been recovered. 14 adults were arrested. The chapel was sealed off. On the hood of the truck, Valor lay curled beside Lily as medics checked her vitals. She held his paw the whole time. "Does he stay with you?" she asked Dani. Dani nodded. Lily bit her lip. "He saved me." Dani's voice cracked. "He saves all of us." Nearby, Ivy handed over a file. "This is bigger than any of us thought. Dozens of properties, fake nonprofits. It's a system." Dani took it. Her eyes didn't harden. They focused. "I'll burn every one of them down." Tom looked over, rubbing his jaw. "You sure you're ready for that kind of war?" Dani met his gaze. "I've been ready since the first time someone told me to look the other way." She walked back to the truck, opened her journal, and wrote one word: Lily. Valor stood beside her, tail still for once. "Let's go find the others," she whispered, and they drove away. Toward another name, another storm, another redemption. The road ahead curled through pine forests and sleeping towns like a question mark waiting to be answered. Dani drove in silence. Valor's head rested on Lily's lap in the back seat. The girl had finally fallen asleep, her hand still tangled in his fur. Her other hand clutched a peanut butter cracker, half eaten. She hadn't let it go in hours, like it was her ticket to normalcy. The heater ticked softly. Outside, dawn brushed the treetops with pale gold. Grant followed behind in the SUV they'd borrowed from the feds, his silhouette visible through the rearview mirror. He hadn't spoken much since Alabama, but when he had, it was clear. He wasn't leaving, not until this was finished. At the edge of a truck stop outside Knoxville, Dani pulled off and parked behind an abandoned billboard. She needed air, needed to not feel the walls of the truck pressing inward with every memory. As she stepped out, frost crunched under her boots. The air bit her skin, crisp and clean. She walked a little, just past the guardrail, then leaned on it and stared out across the valley. She could still hear the girl's voice. "He saved me." It had been days since the raid, and yet the echo stayed. Every rescue just sharpened the ache for the ones they couldn't save. A twig snapped behind her. She turned. It was Lily, blanket draped around her shoulders, Valor walking right behind her like a sentry. "You okay, sweetheart?" The girl nodded, looked down, then up again. "I saw your notebook. All the names." Dani felt her chest tighten. "Yeah, they're the ones we've helped. You should add yours." She blinked. "What?" "You help people. So you're one of the names too." For a moment, Dani didn't know what to say. The wind picked up, lifting Lily's hair from her cheeks. She looked older than 10 in that moment. Weathered, hollowed, but still burning bright like an ember that refused to go out. "You want to help too?" Dani asked quietly. Lily nodded. Dani reached into her pocket, pulled out a red thread, one she'd tied around her wrist months ago. Frayed now, worn thin. She took it off, wrapped it gently around Lily's wrist. "That's what we call ourselves, the thread. We pull until something breaks." Lily looked at it, then at Dani. "I want to pull too." Back in the truck, Dani added a name. Lily Evans, found. Then beneath it, another. Grant Holder, returned. Valor curled up again, this time near Dani's boots, nose pressed to her duffel bag. Inside, the burner phone vibrated. A message. Just coordinates. No sender ID. Same formatting as always. She showed it to Lily. "Do these look familiar?" Lily's eyes narrowed, then widened. "This one's close to where I was before they moved me. I heard someone say, 'Back to the clinic.'" Dani nodded, back into the fire. She turned the key. As they headed out, the radio buzzed, Tom on the other end. "We got a problem," he said. "One of the facilities in Texas went dark. No staff, no power, but there's signs someone left fast." "Kids?" Dani asked. "We don't know yet, but there's something else. Someone's deleting our records, even the paper trails we built. Internal, worse, corporate. Someone high up is pulling strings." Dani's grip on the wheel tightened. "How high?" "Board level. Someone funding all of this, using fake shell charities as the front. Send me names. There'll be aliases, dead ends." "I don't care." Tom paused. "You're not gonna like this next part." "What is it?" "One of the names overlaps with your father's unit." Silence. Not the kind that feels empty, the kind that threatens to scream. Dani stared straight ahead, through the fog, through the years. "My father's dead," she said. "Yeah, but maybe not his shadow." The call ended. Valor lifted his head, just slightly. Dani didn't speak for a long time. Then she muttered almost to herself, "So that's what this is?" The red thread didn't just trace abuse, it traced betrayal. Someone her father trusted, someone he trained, was part of this. And now she was going to tear it all down. Not just to save kids, to redeem the ghosts of the ones who didn't survive. 3 days later, they reached the clinic. It was built to look like a health and wellness center. Desert tones, soft music, aromatherapy in the front lobby. But Valor didn't hesitate. He bolted toward the back. No barking, just certainty. Lily followed, not scared, not anymore. They reached a locked cellar door. Dani smashed the keypad with a crowbar. Inside, rows of sleeping bags, canned food, water jugs. But no children, only photos, taped to the walls. Dozens, faces, names. Some crossed out, some circled. And at the center, a photo of her father, and under it, her own. Not from now, from years ago. Military uniform, graduation day. Lily's voice trembled. "They're watching you." Dani turned to the corner. A single red light blinked on a camera. She walked up to it, pulled out a black Sharpie, wrote one word on the wall beside the lens. "Enough." Then she smashed the camera. That night she didn't sleep. She sat outside with Valor beside her, Lily curled up in the truck. She replayed every conversation she ever had with her father about justice, about duty, about what quiet war really meant. She'd thought it was a metaphor. Now it was marching beneath her feet. Valor leaned his head on her knee. She stroked behind his ears, voice soft. "We're gonna bring it all down, boy, one flame at a time." And in the desert wind, under a bruised sky full of stars and silence, she finally let the tears fall. Not for herself, for him, for the man she lost, for the man who might have known what was coming and couldn't stop it, and for the girl in the truck, still dreaming of dogs that don't leave. The storm came hard and fast, sweeping through the desert like a warning. It wasn't just rain, it was rage. Thunder cracked across the sky like an old wound reopening. Dani sat in the truck staring at the horizon, the jagged silhouette of the facility looming in the distance. Valor sat beside her, as still as stone, eyes fixed on the same place. "Tonight's the night," she murmured. Lily stirred in the back seat. She'd been awake for hours, watching Dani like she could read the storm in her eyes. Maybe she could. There was no turning back. The plans had been set. The storm had rolled in like a promise. They'd spent the last few days gathering everything they needed. Federal backup, intel, surveillance. They were going in fast, quiet, and they were going to bring the system crashing down. She checked the watch her father had worn, the one that had stayed locked in her drawer for years. The glass was cracked now, but she didn't care. She had more than his watch. She had his fight. And for the first time since this whole thing started, Dani felt it. The weight wasn't on her alone anymore. Valor shifted his weight, nudging her hand with his nose. He was ready. He always was. Behind them, Grant sat with his gear, double-checking his weapon. "You sure about this?" he asked, his voice raw from days of no sleep. Dani nodded, eyes hard. "The kids are already gone. If we don't move now, we lose them for good." He took a long breath, nodding. But there was something in his eyes now. Something different. He wasn't just doing this to atone for his own mistakes anymore. He was doing it for them. For all of them. They drove forward, headlights cutting through the dust and rain. The sound of the tires was deafening in the night. Dani had always known the darkness here was deep, but tonight it felt thicker than ever. They parked behind a shack near the clinic's back entrance, far enough away to avoid detection, but close enough to strike. Tom's team was already positioned around the perimeter, their faces grim. It had taken days to coordinate this. The place had too many blind spots, too many powerful people covering their tracks. But Dani was done with their shadows. Valor was the first to move. He bounded forward, silent but lethal, his ears pinned back, eyes scanning for any movement. He wasn't just walking, He was hunting, and she was hunting with him. The facility was a maze of steel and glass, not meant to be anything but serene, but Dani had studied every inch of it. She knew where the security cameras were, knew where the back exit was hidden, knew how the doors were locked and how they'd get through them. They made their way inside. The halls were still, too quiet. It almost felt wrong. Every step they took felt like it echoed through time itself, like they were trespassing in a place far older than its walls. Dani's heart pounded in her chest, but her mind was sharp. Too many years of the same nightmare had led to this moment. Every decision had led them here, and they weren't going to stop now. Grant was right behind her, checking the hallway, looking over his shoulder every few steps. He didn't trust anyone, and Dani understood. She'd been there. At the end of the hall, they reached the stairwell that led to the basement. A guard was stationed just inside the door, scanning the hallway. Dani motioned to Grant, and Valor surged ahead, barreling past them with an explosive force. The guard didn't even have time to scream before Valor had him pinned, teeth bared in a silent warning. They moved fast, each step purposeful, like clockwork. Every corner was cleared, every shadow examined. They reached the lowest floor just as the power blinked out. The hum of electricity stilled. The backup generator kicked on seconds later, bathing the hallway in yellow light. Dani's breath caught when she saw what lay ahead. The door at the end of the hall. It was the same door, the one she'd seen in the photos. This time, there would be no escape for the ones behind it. Lily stood in the doorway, shaking from the cold, her breath coming in short bursts. "I saw the red light," she whispered. Dani placed a hand on her shoulder. "You did good, sweetheart." Valor nosed her hand. They'd all done good. With a deep breath, Dani turned the knob. Inside, rows of chairs lined the walls. Behind them, computers hummed with data. Black and white photographs of children, names typed under them. A list, a ledger of pain. There were files here that shouldn't exist. Laws that had been broken, families destroyed, and buried in the center of the room, a single chair, empty. The moment Dani stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind her. Grant cursed, pulling at the door handle, but it wouldn't budge. Dani's eyes darted around the room, heart hammering. Then she saw it. A screen flickered on in the corner, a face appearing on it. A man. Older, cold eyes, mouth twitching into a smirk. "You're a little too late, Rourke." Her blood ran cold, but her voice didn't waver. "You thought you could hide forever?" He laughed. "You don't know who you're dealing with. The system is bigger than you, bigger than your little crusade." "You're wrong," Dani said. "It's over. This ends now." The man on the screen smirked again. "You really think so?" Dani didn't answer. She moved toward the console, her fingers flying over the keys, pulling up files, scanning everything. And then, there it was. The name. Her father's name. She turned to the screen. "You think I didn't notice?" The man froze. "Your last mistake," Dani said, eyes burning, "was thinking I couldn't see the thread you left behind." Her hand slammed down on the keyboard. The system crashed. Alarms blared as the building went into lockdown. The power flickered again, this time cutting the lights completely. But Dani didn't need the lights. She had the thread, and she was going to burn it all. Within moments, agents flooded the building, securing rooms, arresting those responsible. The network crumbled. As dawn broke over the horizon, the man on the screen was silenced forever. The world outside was still, and for the first time in a long time, Dani could hear Valor's steady breathing at her side. She glanced down at Lily, whose eyes were wide, but no longer frightened. "Let's go home," Dani said. Lily smiled, and this time she believed it. This time they all did. The fight was far from over, but it was a start, and for the first time, it felt like they had won. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to like, share, and drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you want more powerful emotional stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. There's so much more to come.